Hey, what up, 8th grade? This is Mr. Rayleigh. This is your video for Wednesday, October the 28th and Thursday, October the 29th, the lessons that we are doing for those days. So remember to do your attendance and your bell ringer. Bell ringers are worth 5 points, so it's important that you guys go ahead and get those taken care of. So a couple different things that we're going to talk about today. Actually, we're going to talk about the Electoral College and what the Electoral College is while we have it. Going to talk a little bit about the primary process and how we elect presidents. Of course, this is the time of year because next Tuesday, we'll be electing president. See if we keep our same president, President Trump, or if we elect a new president, Vice President Biden, who was President Obama's vice president, not to be confused. So let's go ahead and get into our presentation because we've got to review a few things as well before we move on. So today, hopefully, we'll be able to answer the question that's about ready to come up when the slide decides to pull up here in just a second with our nice, slow school Wi-Fi. There we go. So hopefully by the end of today, you'll be able to answer the question, should the U.S. president be elected by the Electoral College or national vote, meaning popular vote, okay? Again, reminder, make sure you guys go and get that bell ringer done and that attendance in. So our bell ringer. What are some of the ideals of government and society expressed in the Declaration of Independence? And in class, we talked about these when we went over them. So things like, basic freedoms that we have, those inalienable rights given to us by God, the fact that, government, people need to have a say and a voice in their government. So those are all types of things that the Declaration of Independence expressed and were later put into our Constitution. There are a number of other things that it went over. I was just trying to hit a couple of the high points. And then we have our quick review. We just got finished the Revolutionary War unit, right? So we're about ready to start talking about the formation of this new country and our government. So we have some pretty major events that led up to what was going on. So we have the Proclamation of 1763, which of course was what the British government issued after the French and Indian War, when the British and their colonies won the war, so they got that land. And then the British government goes and tells the colonists that they cannot go and settle on that land. This makes colonists very unhappy, obviously. And then we have our idea of mercantilism and the taxation without representation, where remember that mercantilism is that idea that country's wealth is measured by having more exports than it has imports, because you get money for exports and you have to pay for your imports. And so they started to impose some taxes, the Sugar and the Stamp Act, which promptly the colonists began to disobey and try to get around those acts. And then we have other actions because of this that the British put on them, like the Quartering Act, because they had to start housing soldiers, and the Townsend Act, which put additional tax on several different things. And one of which being tea, that leads to things like the Boston Massacre and the Boston Tea Party. And then the Tea Act, again, comes back into play. So those were events that happened. And then in response to the Boston Tea Party, the Intolerable Acts happen. And then that's where the war actually begins to take place, is after the Intolerable Acts happen. There's fighting at Lexington and Concord, and then Bunker Hill, and we are now in a full-out rebellion. There were some key players during the Revolutionary War. As far as soldiers, you have George Washington, John Paul Jones, the Green Mountain Boys up in the Northeast, and Ethan Allen. We had political leaders, of course, King George III, who was in England, the king, the monarch in England, and then we have Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Patrick Henry, and John Hancock. These were people that didn't actually fight in the war, but were very instrumental in getting us to that point. They're instrumental in the Congresses, the First and Second Continental Congresses, and then they're also instrumental in forming our government once we won our independence. And then patriots like Sam Adams, Paul Revere, Abigail Adams, who was a huge every great man has a great woman behind them. Abigail Adams was behind her husband, John Adams, really wanted him to add stuff in about women's rights in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. It did not actually make it in. And actually, I guess not so much the Constitution, because he was overseas, but definitely in the Declaration of Independence. And then you have Nathan Hale and, of course, our man Thomas Paine, who we're about ready to talk to again about right now, with some of the important historical documents. So Common Sense, written by Thomas Paine. He's an immigrant from Britain, comes over in 1774, writes this pamphlet, 500,000 cell. It basically says why we should no longer be a part of England and why we should be our own country. It was written in common language. A lot of people could read it and understood what was going on. The Olive Branch Petition, which was the last-ditch effort by the Second Continental Congress to try to make amends with the Crown and with the British government, it doesn't work. And then, of course, the Declaration of Independence, which was written by a committee, though we usually give Thomas Jefferson a lot of the credit for it. He was the primary writer, but guys like Benjamin Franklin and John Adams were part of the editing crew that gave us what we see today as our Declaration of Independence. Quick reminder, the assessment that we gave on Monday or Tuesday, depending on which class that you had with me, that is due on Friday. Please make sure you guys get that Unit 2 assessment. It's multiple choice, open book. No reason why you shouldn't be able to do a good job on this. It's not something you're going to be able to do in 5 minutes. It's probably going to take 30 or 40 minutes to do it correctly, but you have your book, you have your notes. Go ahead and to help you be able to find some of those answers that you're not sure of. All right. So our compelling question for this new unit, which is on the Constitution, is how much power should a government have? We're going to examine how the nation's founders applied the ideals of the Declaration of Independence to create a government that has served Americans well more than 200 years. Of course, there's a lot of debate, especially in these days, about how much it serves all Americans. And I hope we're getting there. And we have come a long ways as a country, but I guess that's a discussion for another day. So here we go. Let's get into this. So our dad joke of the day. When does a skeleton laugh? When something tickles his funny bone. All right. Ha ha. Good one, huh? So Electoral College. All right, guys, we're going to learn today. We're going to learn about the Electoral College and why we have it. So in class, and we're not going to read this out loud, but in class, we have this reading, and it's a short, quick reading about the electoral process, and it talks about the Electoral College as well as the electoral process. So it talks about when the elections are, how we narrow the field from candidates to get to two candidates that we typically vote for. It talks about the difference between a caucus and a primary election that gets us our two candidates. It talks about how our nominees are nominated, and then how they go on the campaign trail, how they get information out, election day, what happens there, and then, of course, the Electoral College and what the Electoral College is all about. So it's a good reading. You are going to need that to do your discussion. This is a good little video. I'm not going to show it, but I do suggest that you go ahead and watch it. It does a really good explanation on the Electoral College and what it is, why we still use it today, and they give points on why maybe we shouldn't use it and points on why we should still use it. So again, this is something that you can refer to during your discussion. So I would highly suggest it's only 5 minutes watching that. And this is just a cool little interactive thing, which will allow you to go in and look at the electoral map for this year's election. And it has blue, dark blue would be states that they really strongly think these are strongholds, and these are solidly going to go for Vice President Biden. And the dark red would be states that they know are going to go for President Trump. They're almost 100% sure. And then the ones that are shaded light blue or light red are ones that typically go Republican or Democrat. They're not 100% sure, but they think that's the way it's going to go. And then the gray ones are ones that are what we call swing states. These are states that we're not sure which way it's going to go yet. And these are ones that really are going to be extremely important for winning the election. Okay. So, and you can go through and you can kind of click and make predictions of where you think they may fall. And, when you click, say, this one, it will turn it blue, but you can also turn it if you think it might turn red and go to President Trump. Okay. And you just go around and you click it, and then it will give you the electoral votes or how many electoral votes each one will get. And you will see 270 is the magic number. That's where you're trying to get to. And then finally, the last thing you're going to do is in your module, you will see that there is a discussion question. And what you're going to do is you're going to answer the question, should the United States president be elected by Electoral College or by the national vote? And hopefully, if you do the reading, you watch the video, you're going to understand what the Electoral College is and how it's different than the national or popular vote. What you have to do is you have to give one piece of evidence, either from the reading or from the video. And then you need to respond to one other person who had a different view. So you're either for the Electoral College or you're for the national vote as being the true way. And you just do a quick response. Remember, we're going to keep these cordial. We're going to keep these polite, and have fun with the discussions. So I will show you right here when you go into the module where that discussion is. So you would go in here and click on the discussion. It takes you to the discussion board. This is your 10-point assignment for today. So I want you to go through. You have to give your opinion. Are you for the Electoral College? Give one reason from the reading or from the video, or the or national vote, which is the popular vote. One reason from the reading or from the video, okay? And then you need to respond to one other person's post. So if you have any questions, again, as always, reach out to me here in the inbox, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. I will see you guys in the next